and welcome. Our today's guest is a teacher, author, private consultant, coach, trainer. We could go on. She was also a student of His Holiness the Dalai Lama and spent 7 years as a Tibetan Buddhist nun. She teaches simple yet powerful methods that help thousands of people to achieve better health, a personal sense of purpose, and contentment. Joining us is Ms. Daiki Lee Aldershaw.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
For the beginning, I would like for you to share with our audience the story of why you came about to teach what you teach. You come from a family of Olympic athletes. You were an athlete yourself and you became ill, and then you started researching how the mind and body work and how to heal it. Can you tell us a bit more?
Yeah. I grew up in a family of kayakers and canoers with my father and my brothers and now my nephew now going to the London Olympics. So it's a whole world of competitiveness, and I trained myself, and I don't have a disposition naturally for competition, so the only way for me to really win was to learn how to hate other girls, at least for just 2 minutes during a race. You know, and if you find that you're needing to do that long enough, you know, then in retrospect I can see that I actually made myself sick with that kind of thinking. And from that, I ended up having to quit when I made the national team myself due to a blood disorder. And you know, during the time that we're training, we're learning about the power of the mind over, you know, for performance. In some ways, the body's kind of stupid in that it'll follow what the mind is showing it to do. So by visualizing again and again, you know, the results of a positive race, the body's trained to respond that way. So after getting sick, I began to take a look at, well, what creates sickness and what creates health, and was able to, you know, change and transform, you know, a blood disorder, you know, once I figured out what the underlying cause of it was, which was that, you know, my brothers were coaching me. For me to quit, getting sick was the most gentle way, really, for me to get out of that sport, because it just wasn't really the way I naturally operate. So later I began coaching and coached a girls' team and had 2 sisters that had to race against each other, and for a national team spot. And one of them got so sick she was in the hospital. And once the race was called off, then she healed within 6 hours. So my interest at that point switched to the power of the mind and the relationship with the body to heal versus perform. And since then, I've been experimenting with different meditation methods, you know, different visualization methods to help to complement, you know, the treatment that we're getting with Orthodox medicine, and have pretty much come to a point of about 3 or 4 basic meditation-based exercises that just seem to work very well. And I have a kind of criteria for that, which is that it needs to be gentle, it needs to be simple enough for even children to use, and it has to work. So that's the criteria I use that has become what I now call transformative mindfulness.
I also read somewhere on your web pages about a time where you were in India and you had a conversation with one of the Dalai Lama's personal physicians that told you like a prediction that made you enforce you in what you do. Can you share that also with us?
Yeah. When I was a Tibetan Buddhist nun, I was a Tibetan Buddhist nun for 7 years in Australia, which is, you know, after years of meditating just generally brought me into that direction. And was doing a retreat in Dharamsala where the Dalai Lama lives, and was going to his physician, his initial physician, which reestablished Mensakan, which is the Tibetan medical institute that used to be in Lhasa. And he was about 81 years old, quite old, and every 2 weeks I'd go in and he'd take my pulses, check all my organs. But he would also give me this little piece of advice. And one day he was just looking very sad, and he said, due to the stimulus and the overstimulus in the West, of electronics, of all these different things, the body will follow the mind. And if we do that with our minds, all the body can do is really manifest complex disease. It's going to mimic what our minds are doing. He says, so he can see that in the future there'll be a time when we will have complex disease that medical science, and medicine, both Western and Eastern, Tibetan, Chinese, will not be able to do something with. And he said, go back into the retreat you're doing and start meditating on what you're going to do about that. And it just, it left me with pretty much a sense of, well, the most important thing then is to get to the underlying cause of that type of thing and, transform the seeds that could result in that type of result, and look for ways that get directly into these underlying causes. So it became very clear that this is the work I'll be doing the rest of my life.
You also say that by giving people these simple techniques, you're giving them the power back to themselves. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah. Kind of takes me to a story of, I had some abuse as I was growing up, even in that very powerful, performance environment. There's still an abusive aspect to all that. And I remember going to a therapist for help with that and leaving feeling more abused by the method that they used than the problem I went there with. And I remember sitting kind of shaking my fist at God, going like, I'm not willing to do this, because the whole rest of my life I'm going to be either enhancing what's positive or healing what still needs healing. It felt like I was, like toothpaste being squeezed. So I remember just putting out a prayer or a invocation of some kind that says, I want a way that's fun, that's gentle, but it's working, and slowly came to this way of working where you can access the underlying cause of what's going on in a very gentle way by checking how the body is responding. So if I'm in a situation where anger arises, I can sit and think about it and analyze it in a more therapeutic way. Or I can just go to how my body's responding, which is like it feels like there's a knot in my chest, and start there, and from there be able to access more information on more subtle levels very easily through metaphor, and from there transform them. So in some ways it's like taking therapy back into our own hands. So it's very helpful in terms of, it's just inexpensive because we're doing it ourselves to begin with. And we also found, even with sexual abuse, working in clinics in Australia, that we could do in 6 sessions what would take a year and a half for a psychologist to normally do with, a case like that. So we're also finding that by being able to touch in, because in some ways what we're doing is quite different from applying the antidote to something. If you want to stop being angry, start being more patient. What we're doing here is we're actually using the problem to find, so transformation works so much differently. We actually use the power of that anger to then transform it into the highest benefit, which often has to do with people's life force. What are they here on the planet for? The fire in their belly to make a difference in some way. Because I've often found where there's anger, there's also something that I care about so much that it makes me angry. So it's like, if I try to get rid of that anger just like that, I lose some very important information. So in some ways, we're using techniques that someone can use to actually make this shift themselves. And some of the most effective facilitators we have been mothers, where they're so motivated to help because their child has just been sent home by the teacher to be put on Ritalin, which is a drug for kids' hyperactivity. And the mother's going, no, because this teacher has sent 10 kids home, which is letting her know the teacher doesn't know quite how to handle her class. It's from there. They have such a motivation to help, and it's those kids that are using these methods that are, I got a phone call from one mother. She says, "Is it safe?" And it's like, why? Well, my 10-year-old just did it with all the children when in the play yard. And that 10-year-old then became our first trained facilitator when she was 14, working with youth. So in some ways, you could call them self-help methods. But I think the power really is being able to take it home ourselves and have something we can use as a tool for life, rather than being dependent always on the professionals to guide us, in our self-discovery.
Great. We're going to try it in a bit. But first, let's discuss when we can use it. You mentioned with hyperactive children, with anger. What are other circumstances?
I have one facilitator who's a musician, actually, a Gothic type of musician, named Blake Bliss, who has a website, a YouTube channel, and he works with with youth who are cutting, who are suicidal, and specifically with bullying. We've used it for cardiac patients, for HIV. We've used it with multiple sclerosis. So any disease, has got this other layer of reaction to it, of pushing it away, or just any time there's any physical symptom or pain in the body. So right now we're doing research at the University of Florence on acute migraines, and reducing, pain, and whether we can bring the med levels down or the side effects become less. We've used it with women who are going into chemo after cancer. So we've used it a lot around cancer and the reaction to cancer, the fear around it, actually focusing in on that area in their bodies specifically, and have had, success in using it as a complementary therapy, so that the chemotherapy works better with less side effects, things like that. So you could use it almost for any problem that arises. Any time you're feeling a reaction in your body, you can use this type of exercise.
Okay, let's teach our audience how to use it.
Okay.
So basically, you can take just a few minutes out of your day, or is it good to do it regularly, or you just do it when there's something acute?
It's probably good to maybe do it once a week. So this is different from regular meditation. It's more preventive or more intervention, a little bit more therapeutic. So if you did it every day, you'd be changing too much too fast. So what you're going to want to do is make a shift, let it change as much as you can at one time. And for some people, something might change altogether. Sometimes it just changes in little steps so that we can integrate it and take it out into our lives. So it's not like a daily practice, which you can use mindfulness or just awareness for. But the first step is like mindfulness. It's starting by becoming aware and not resisting your response to the problem. And from there, we have this little transformative step that accesses the wisdom you have inside yourself to allow that to change. And the most important thing is to kind of get out of the way and just watch what's happening internally, like a video, for those who are visual, or just to feel what's going on. And for some who are like musicians and writers, they tend to hear words inside. So it's just trusting whatever the response is while you're doing the exercise. Just trust and
just going with it.
Yeah, and quite often we'll get people to document what their experience is. We won't do that on film, but to sit and draw or write whatever they experience, because by putting it in front of them, they're no longer saying, this is all me. They're saying, there's me and my cancer, or me and my anger. And that separation starts to help as well. So,
how do you know when you're listening or seeing things that it's not just your imagination going wild?
Well, the wonderful thing is it is your imagination, and that's what we're accessing. So we're starting with the sensation and how your body's responding. And then there's this interesting relationship with the body and the mind. The body's quite stupid when it comes to doing what the mind tells it to do, directing it. But on the other hand, the body and the muscle have got one level of consciousness that has all the memories to do with that part of our body, or those cells, even our genetics, or even lineage things that have come in with our parents or through our society. We carry all this incredible database of information. So one way to access is it through the body. So on the other hand, the body is incredibly wise, or the consciousness that is aware of that and has first information to give us about the problem, but also information about the solution. So when I say use your imagination, I think one reason why children and young people are so good at doing this is because they have a great imagination. So you could say we're making it up, but we're actually going quite receptive. We're more like dipping into different parts of our own database for information.
Great.
So we can just try it.
Yes, let's try it.
Okay, so a good idea is to start by just closing your eyes. And just take a few deep breaths, and as you're breathing out, just first bring yourself right to the present moment. So it'd be good to just feel your weight on the chair. Just let yourself be here. And just taking another deep breath. Perhaps what you could do is just consider a situation in your life right now that's causing any kind of trauma or causing any stress, or just is a really uncomfortable situation. So all you need to do is just recollect one situation right now that you'd like to change, or a relationship. All you have to do is just remember one moment or one conversation. And who was there, what was happening. Continuing to breathe. And you're just going to touch into it just long enough to recollect how that feels. Might be happening now, it might have happened in the past. And then just scan your body and notice where might you feel any discomfort as you recollect that. Where's your body holding any discomfort or tension or pressure, when you re-experience this situation? And just put your hand on that area. Okay. And then what we start to do is look for more information about that. So consider, is that sensation in your body closer to the skin, or is it deeper inside? See if you can locate it. And then check how big an area does it feel. Does it feel just small, or does it feel bigger? And then you can also even ask if it had a shape. What shape would it be? Does it feel two-dimensional or three-dimensional? If it had a shape, what would that be? So we're just looking for more information about it. If it had a color, would it be light or dark? What color would it be? And looking for more information, you can imagine that if it had its own consciousness, its own thoughts and emotions, what's it feeling like in there? Is it feeling fearful or sad, or just even neutral? What's it feeling? So we start treating it as a separate kind of mind. can also check whether it feels solid, whether it feels more liquid or transparent, or that it moves around. You know, what's its density? Another thing you can ask is, does it feel young, as if it hasn't been there very long, or does it feel old, as if you've had it for a long time? Quite often we carry these things for a long time. You can even ask, does it feel old or does it feel ancient? It's been there a long, long time. So how old is it? Another thing you can ask is, does it have a job to do? If it is old or ancient, quite often when it was first put there, whatever the discomfort is, there's a good chance that it had a job to do. Somehow it might have helped. So just ask, what was its job? And there may even be the chance that there's some wisdom there that it's holding that's important to hear. So you can also ask, you know, what is it that it knows? What wisdom is it carrying that's important to hear right now? And just take a moment to listen. And from there, then, you know, this is the part that we're just exploring it. And now we start a transformative shift by starting by asking, are you willing to let this change in a way that's even more beneficial? Are you willing to let it change in a way that is more beneficial? And sometimes you might need to ask it as if it's, you know, an individual, separate consciousness. Is it willing to change in a way that will help it to do what it needs to do in a way that's more beneficial? And that might not be completely 100%. It might just be a little bit, as if a door is just open a little, but it's still open. Just a little willingness is enough. So if you are willing, you can just nod your head. Okay. So the next step is to ask for help. Just ask for help from the wisdom within yourself. There is a wisdom there that knows. For those that are more religious, they can ask for help from a spiritual source, or a source of sacred energy, of, you know, of kindness, of wisdom, of love. It's different for every person. Just ask for help, and the next step is to just watch what happens. Let go, don't try to direct it. Just observe it. If you have an image like a video, see if anything changes. You may not have an image, you might just feel what it feels like in your body. Just notice what happens. Also listen for words, sounds. The main thing here is to just get out of the way, allow what happens, even if it's nothing, even if it doesn't change. But let whatever happens be okay. Just watching for change. Taking your time, but not forcing or directing it. And just letting it change as much as it would want to at this time. And taking whatever time you need, and when you feel it's changed as much as it wants to, then you can just take a deep breath and gently bring yourself back, opening your eyes again. So just take the time you need.
Oh, that was something. Thank you. Is it wise to wait with another problem to do it in a week or so? Or is it okay if you do it one problem one day, another problem the second day, and so on? Or is that too much?
Well, if you consider there is this process of detoxification and integrating it, then you want to be also kind to yourself. So if I'm constantly re-stimulating a new problem, then you're not really giving yourself time to let it integrate. So I'd say once a week. But about 2 months ago, I got an email from a woman in Israel who has had 20 years of acute back pain, couldn't work, and she found it on the web and used it, like sometimes like every single day for 2 weeks, and her back pain was completely gone for the first time. So she even, well, I don't know, I guess I had some guidelines for how to use it, but she used it intuitively the way she felt she could. So it may be for pain, things like that, then perhaps it could be used more often.
I believe we've come to the end of our show, sadly. Maybe one last question for you personally. Do you do it often, or what other things you do in your daily life to retain your health and balance?
I use this anytime I have a challenge, any reaction to any situation. So that keeps things very balanced. I take things lightly. I laugh at myself. I don't expect myself to have it all sorted out. So I think that lightens things up. I do regular meditation as well. So I've got a kind of a daily practice that I do just to try to keep things balanced. And I use this when, things are up and down and coming at me. And, I travel a lot, so I run into lots of reasons to use it. Yeah. Perhaps something I could just add very briefly is if anyone here in Slovenia would like to try this exercise, that we have a website that Mirjana Ogrin has created here in Slovenia so that people can do that exercise for free. It's called www.ido.si, and they can just download the audio for free and just do what you just did anytime they want. And we have a free meditation by telephone that people Skype into all over the world. And we have a group here called Chagna Pemo Meditation Study Group that gets together once a month and joins people all over the world with something we call the Great Global Shift. And that's using this exercise, but taking it a step further for people who are finding areas in the world and people and situations in the world that they feel completely helpless about. It's something we're all facing now. So it's a way to transform that sense of helplessness into action we know we can take, and a sense of confidence. And also transformative mindfulness, when you need it, is an option. Just when people are being faced with something, they can just come again by Skype, just telephone in. Every 2 weeks we do that, so people can just do this very, very inexpensively whenever they need it to, and I can facilitate that. So those are different ways people could do more of this if they wanted to.
Great.
Thank you.
They can research online and find the ways.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Okay.
I wish for you to take the power back into your own hands and make the shifts in your life gentle and positive. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.